Okay, so this reads. Oh shoot. Okay, I reacted to this before earlier yesterday, but I didn't record this part of the video, so I'm recording it again just to get my reaction again, which is cool. So this says famous athlete says 100 million is not enough.
What's poppin', y'all? One of the most highest paid NFL athletes, Odell Beckham Jr. But this clip started surfacing of him on this podcast that was talking about handling money as a professional athlete, and a lot of people took offense to it, and I had a bit of a different take. So first I'm going to play you guys the clip, and then we're going to go into a little bit of analysis on it.
If I didn't have a dollar in my account right here today as we speak, I'm going to be straight for the rest of my life. No question, right? I don't think everybody is in that. And when you've sacrificed your whole life to get here, and you're like, yeah, I played 10 years in the league, and
I'm gonna rewind because I want to hear that again. Hold on.
Clip started surfacing of him
Excuse
on
me.
this podcast that was talking about handling money as a professional athlete, and a lot of people took offense to it, and I had a bit of a different take. So first I'm going to play you guys the clip, and then we're going to go into a little bit of analysis on it.
If I didn't have a dollar in my account right here today as we speak, I'm going to be straight for the rest of my life. No question, right? I don't think everybody is in that. And when you've sacrificed your whole life to get here, and you're like, yeah, I played 10 years in the league, and I always explain this to people, I'm like, bro, you give somebody a 5-year, $100 million contract, right? What is it really? It's 5 years for 60. You're getting taxed. Do the math. That's 12 a year, you know, that you have to spend, use,
Save,
invest, flaunt, like whatever, however, just being real. I'm gonna buy a car, I'm gonna give my mama a house, I'm gonna do, everything costs money. So if you spending $4 million a year, that's really 40 million over 5 years, 8 a year, you know? And now you start breaking down the numbers, it's like, that's a 5-year span of where you're getting 8 million. Can you make that last forever? And you always hear the people who ain't us and ain't been in the position, like, oh, well, that would last a lifetime.
So the original caption where I first saw this, not the original, but where I first saw this was on my mixtapes, and they said Odell Beckham Jr. talks about the struggles of a $100 million contract and how the money doesn't last forever.
You're right.
In the beginning,
I
of
agree
the
with
clip,
this.
He says, if I didn't have a single dollar sitting in front of you right here as we speak, I, Odell Beckham Jr., is going to be straight for the rest of his life. And then he goes on to say, look, all of these other people, a lot of these other people in the league, they may not be in that same position as me. Many are not in that same position as I am. So
You don't have to be in that position.
That he's the guy that he's handled his situation, and he doesn't have to worry about finances ever again, which is impressive. However, a lot of people started spreading this around, like him saying it wasn't enough. Like the 100 M's he got isn't enough, because he goes on and breaks it down, the money aspect of it. But first, before we go and break down the money aspect, I want to get to the tweets that Odell sent out himself. So he says, boy, you can't say nothing in this world nowadays. That's why I've been in my own lane, my own world, and put out the way. I'm guessing that was a typo. People love to take ish completely out of context to rationalize a statement
In their own head.
that makes sense to them. What a world. And he replies underneath a tweet that he sent out on March 17th, 2022, which is nearly 3 years ago. And on that day, he said, as if I needed more motivation. I'm going to make my son proud as F when I'm done with all this. From what I did on the field to the way I handled all the other ish that came with it. Zidane, son, I love you, and daddy gonna make you proud. I mean that. And then the recent reply was, of course you wouldn't understand what I'm saying. So this is also in reference to this, saying that 3 years ago, he was talking about how he was going to be straight on or off the field regardless of what happened. Now, I put out a tweet saying something that was... Cause
I've always been a fan of Odell
basic
Beckham.
instinct, our gut
And
reaction
then playing
to
football.
something like that is, come on, man, you can't handle 100 million? Poor you. And sure, that's the initial response that I would have. But as you see more situations in front of you, as you begin to know more people in these type of situations, as you begin to build up some empathy, yes, empathy for rich people and athletes, while I know it's a shocking concept, you start to see some of the challenges that they have to deal with that others do not. So I said, everyone is calling this a skill issue. Sure, but how the hell are they supposed to have the skill? Just hire a money manager, bro. And how do they know which one to trust that isn't stealing from them? Like, for example, Gilbert Arenas, if you watch any of his interviews that he's done a lot on Vlad. They are excellent interviews. He talks about having a guy that was stealing money from him. And then the immediate reaction you get from the average person is, yeah, because he hired his mans from college. No, these people are hiring professionals. There are professionals that are skimming off the top. And they're like, hey, I have an opportunity to take advantage of this guy. Why wouldn't I? And when you're an athlete, and I continue and say, these accountants, managers, agents, etc. have decades of experience dealing with athletes. The athlete has zero experience. Nobody wants to admit it's really hard to handle career and finances when it comes in one shot. Not to mention their full-time job is to be an athlete, which takes mental and physical effort. And I want to compare this to music because I do think there are a couple of similarities and a couple of differences. One of the similarities being that the money comes in really fast. Now, a lot of people are saying stuff like, oh, he could just invest into this type of thing and then it'll grow year over year. And then you've got people that are actual business owners. I don't want to hear from business owners, to be honest, because if you're a business owner, you didn't start your business and then boom, you suddenly got an injection of $25 million. No, you usually had to grow it. You learned the skills on the job. So you're like, okay, I can hire my first employee now. How much should I charge him to make sure that I'm making more revenue than this employee is costing me? Otherwise, I'm losing out. Maybe you had someone steal from you. You figured out a better situation to handle that. Maybe you hire somebody to watch him, or maybe you buy some technology to make sure that he doesn't steal from you if it's a physical business. Things like that. And then you're building and building and building, and you can have a hockey stick effect in business, but you're learning all of these things on the job. You're not getting smacked with a ton of money, and you're not doing anything different than you once did. That's the thing. It's like these guys are playing basketball or they're playing football. They're doing the same thing that they were doing since they were 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. They're just doing it more competitively. And suddenly a wave of money washes over them. And this is different, I think, in the NBA because a lot of the NBA now is...
Wow, look at this. 94% of people believe company culture is important to an organization.
Athletes that came from families that were already at least upper middle class, if not sons of NBA players, so they already grew up rich and they never really have to worry about falling down. However, a lot of NFL players, they come from the gutter. They come from the mud. And when you come from the mud, you have this feeling where it's like, damn, I gotta at least get my mama a crib, right? And there's this lack of selfishness, which is necessary when you're making that much money. And this is also another thing. People see how much money you're making. They see your contract. So your whole family knows, and a lot of them can't say no. So they're buying cribs, whips, etc. And what eats them up is the upkeep. So I think one of the biggest issues that NFL players or athletes have, even rappers and artists, is that their fixed monthly costs are as high as if they were going to continue to make the same money that they were making at their peak. I think that's the biggest problem more than splurging on anything else. Because rarely ever is it an athlete makes, I don't know, let's say 10 million a year and they spend 9 M's or 10 M's. That's too close. However, they may be making 10 M's a year on a 5-year contract and they spend 5 M's, but their fixed monthly costs are anywhere from, let's say, $250K a month, which is about, what is that? That's about a couple million a year. But then what if they get injured and it's a career-ending injury? And now after that 5 years, they've still got that same lifestyle expense. And it's not only their lifestyle, it's also maintaining the lifestyle of their family. Now they're in a pickle. So they've got to scramble. Artists go through something similar. The difference is, though, is that artists can come back. Like, an artist can bounce back and drop another hit song years later. Like, Soulja Boy's done it several times. Who else has done it? Lil Yachty never really fell off. He's always handled his finances well. But you can probably come up with some other names. But with artists, they get hit with a wave of money immediately as well. And a lot of them spend all of it. And they're kind of screwed. And it's harder for artists because they're not getting the bags that athletes are getting, nor are they getting the resources. But where I'm saying the comparison comes in is everyone talks about, oh yeah, this rapper got a terrible deal or this artist got a terrible deal. Well, they all get terrible deals. And they also say, oh, well, they should have gotten a lawyer. Okay. Yeah, they should get an entertainment lawyer that's really good. The entertainment lawyer that's really good has worked with how many record labels and has worked with signing how many artists to those record labels. So who does it serve lawyer with signing how many artists to those record labels? So who does it serve the lawyer to be more to be more helpful towards, especially for a first contract. An artist that is most likely going to fail, because most artists fail in the long run, or a record label that he's had a relationship with already and will continue to have a relationship with for the foreseeable future. You get what I'm saying now? So most artists' first contracts suck unless they come with a ton of leverage. And then if they come with a ton of leverage, they didn't really need the contract, need in quotations. If they wanted to get to a certain level, of course, they would have to at least work together in that regard. And Russ is an example of somebody that didn't need the contract and he ended up getting a JV. Similar situation with Epic Records and 21 Savage, because 21 Savage was independent. I think he only had a distribution deal or something like that. And then he did a JV, but he had already blown up. Like X, My Heart, all of those songs came out. I think the original Savage Mode was him independently. So he didn't need a label. He was already lit. And you have to learn all of this stuff whilst also trying to be a professional athlete, and you're flying everywhere. And for the artist, you have to be making music, you have to be making sure you're relevant, you have to be traveling, touring, doing all of this. So you need somebody that you can trust to handle this stuff. And of course, nobody's going to watch over your money like you watch over your money, but you kind of need somebody to handle it. And that's the difference between these and like a business owner, because someone that's an entrepreneur, a business owner, they have to watch the money. That's how otherwise their business is going to fall apart. For the athlete, or the musician, they have to watch their music or make the music, or they have to watch their body and their performance on the field. Like the money is something that's like kind of like not an afterthought, but it's not the highest priority, especially when they know that the money's locked in, and the flow of money too. Now, lifestyle inflation is bad because a lot of these NFL players, I think it's flying private is probably just the worst thing. I think this is what crushes a lot of people, because flying private is like lighting money on fire. And I think once these guys fly private and flex flying private, they cannot go back. I don't think it's the houses. I really kind of don't even think it's like the splurging. It's tricking too, but nothing spends like either a gambling addiction or the private jets, the private flying. Because now imagine you're going past the aisle and you take a flick of OBJ and you're like, damn, OBJ in economy right now. That's crazy. He was posting himself in jets the past 3 years. He down bad now. And we talk about it like, come on, man, you can't suck it up. Like, what's so bad about economy? You're mad about a couple of people laughing at you. And we're not saying OBJ, because he said he's financially solid. But there's a lot of uncertainty that you don't anticipate as an athlete. I think a lot of them screw themselves over by just like, getting a chick pregnant. But these are mistakes that are going to continue to happen. And I think a lot of people assume that they would know exactly how to handle a situation without ever being remotely close to it or understanding what comes with it. Like, you can't feel the emotional pressure that an athlete has when they get a big contract unless you've been in that situation, or you try really hard to think like, damn, these are the struggles that would probably come up. You're just thinking logically, and we really do not operate logically. Otherwise, we wouldn't. A lot of people's bad habits would not be bad habits if they thought logically. They would have just avoided them from the beginning. And when you're an athlete, it's like, for example, we know that, the average person's career in the NFL is something like 3 years. We've seen that number. I don't even know if that number is accurate. But you ask every NFL player, or somebody that just got drafted to the NFL, and you ask them, how long do you think your career is going to last? How many of them do you think are going to say 3 years? Probably nobody. They all think that their
probably nobody
last as long as possible. Same thing with people that, do certain substances. You're like, a lot of people just randomly have some fent in this. Like, what are the odds that you think yours is going to happen? They're probably like, nah, that won't happen to me. It's always that won't happen to me. So when an injury just comes out, suddenly ends the person's career in a sport like football, that is a brutal sport. Now you're cooked, you're deep fried, and you've got to scale back your lifestyle, which is what most of them have to do. And this is circling this all the way back to music. Why I think music is better is because music will always generate money if you've had a hit or a couple of hits. So for musicians, like for example, Lil Pump recently talked about going broke. Scott Storch had talked about going down to zero. Realistically, what happened with most artists that have had hits or producers that have had hits is that their monthly expenses were too high, and they were still generating money from their music, from their catalog, because they just had such massive hits, but it wasn't enough. So like, let's say their catalog is generating 30 bands a month for them. And I know it's paid quarterly or something like that, but you guys get my point. Their lifestyle is 100K. So they're drowning until eventually they're broke. But if they just go to zero for a couple of months or maybe like a year, their money's going to keep coming in. With an athlete, that's not going to happen. You have to do something. Like, sure, athletes, maybe they can start coaching, maybe they can start speaking. Some of them can get certain deals, probably to do interviews nowadays. But their old performance on the field is not going to pay them in the future like a musician's old hits will be paying them. Like, just look at the Billboard 200 this year and look at how many albums, or this week, look at how many albums on there were released decades ago. And to be on the Billboard 200, you at least have to be selling like 6K that week, which is at least 50,000 USD. And that's just in America, by the way. That's not counting all of the streams and everything outside. So these albums from decades ago are generating that much weekly, on a weekly basis. Do you think the artist has to do a damn thing? Nah, they just chill. They just have to not have too expensive taste. But yeah, I think the struggles, I do not envy the struggles of an athlete, especially the age too. You know, people talk about this prefrontal cortex, a whole meme. It's such a meme now of like being 25. Now imagine you're 19, 20, 21 and you're getting hit with, there can't be a higher dopamine hit than like getting 5, 6, 7 M's. You hit upside the top of the head with that. Like, that's a lot of money to get hit with. You can't even fathom having much more than that. But let me know what y'all think in the comments. Like, subscribe, and
As I say, no matter how much you got, it is not enough to last a lifetime.